All right, everybody, buckle up. Today, we're really diving deep, get it, deep dive, into the world of cryptography.
Sounds exciting.
It is actually.
Yeah.
But, we're not talking about Cold War spies and Enigma machines, although that stuff is cool too.
Yeah.
We're focusing on cryptography that you and I use, like, every single day.
And it really is everywhere, even if most people don't even realize it.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're using Cryptography for Dummies, written by Chey Cobb.
A classic.
Definitely a classic. It really helps demystify this whole topic. Okay, so first things first. What exactly is cryptography? I mean, we toss the word around a lot, but at its core.
It's all about scrambling data, turning it into, digital gibberish so no one can understand it unless they have the key to unscramble it.
Like a secret code.
Exactly. Think of those old school spy movies where they're using, code books and secret ciphers. Cryptography is kind of like that, just way more high-tech.
Way more high-tech, for sure. But the basic principles are the same. You've got your message, we call that plain text, in the cryptography world.
Right. And then you use an algorithm, or a cipher, to encrypt it, which turns it into ciphertext. That ciphertext looks like gobbledygook to anyone without the proper decryption key.
And that's where the key comes in. It's what unlocks the code, so to speak.
Exactly. And just like with real keys, there are different types of cryptographic keys. But before we get into all that, think back for a second to one of the earliest and simplest ciphers, the Caesar cipher.
Oh, yeah, I remember learning about that. You just shift each letter in the alphabet a certain number of places down the line. A becomes D, B becomes E, and so on.
Exactly. So hello becomes ku. Without knowing that the shift is 3 places, it's just a jumble of letters. But with the key, it's easy peasy to decode.
Okay, so the Caesar cipher is our basic decoder ring. It's simple, but it illustrates the core concept of how ciphers and keys work together.
Precisely. Of course, modern cryptography uses vastly more complex algorithms than just shifting letters.
Oh, for sure. We're talking serious math and computer science here. Like, one well-known algorithm is DES, the data encryption standard, which was, the gold standard for a while.
It was considered very secure for its time. But as technology advanced and computing power increased, vulnerabilities in DES were discovered.
Hence the need for stronger encryption. So they came up with 3DES, triple DES, which, as the name suggests, is basically DES applied 3 times.
Exactly. It's all about staying ahead of the curve because as technology evolves, so do the methods used to try and break encryption. It's a constant game of cat and mouse between the code makers and the code breakers.
And that brings up a good point. There's no such thing as 100% unbreakable encryption, right?
Unfortunately not. Any code, given enough time, resources, and computing power, could potentially be cracked.
So it's all about making it as difficult as possible for the bad guys to crack the code.
Absolutely. And that's where things like key length and algorithm strength come into play. The longer the key and the more complex the algorithm, the harder it is to break the encryption.
Okay, I'm starting to get the lingo down. We've got plain text, ciphertext, algorithms, keys. But why is all this important for the average person? Why should we care about cryptography? It all seems kind of technical and maybe not that relevant to our daily lives. I mean, you're right, this does sound pretty technical, but
Yeah.
you're saying it is relevant. Most people probably don't even realize how much cryptography impacts their daily lives.
Exactly. You'd be surprised. Think about something as simple as using your debit card at the grocery store.
Okay.
Cryptography is what protects your card information as it travels from the card reader to the bank and back again.
Oh, wow. I never even thought about that.
See? It's everywhere. Or how about when you log into your online banking?
Yeah.
That little padlock icon you see in your browser window, that's there thanks to cryptography, specifically something called HTTPS, which creates a secure connection between your computer and the bank's website.
So anytime I see that padlock, I know my information is being encrypted and protected.
Exactly. It's like a digital seal of approval. And it's not just financial stuff either. Think about streaming services like Netflix or Spotify.
Oh, yeah, you use those all the time.
They use cryptography to protect their movies, TV shows, and music from being pirated. Without it, anyone could just copy and share that content without paying.
Oh, wow. So cryptography is protecting the entertainment industry, too. Who knew?
And let's not forget about digital signatures. They're used to verify the authenticity of electronic documents, like contracts or emails.
So that's how you know an email is really from who it says it's from, not some scammer.
You got it. Digital signatures use cryptography to ensure that a document hasn't been tampered with and that it really originated from the supposed sender.
Wow, this is blowing my mind. Cryptography is literally everywhere. But okay, let's say I'm convinced and I want to start using encryption to protect my OWN data. How do I actually do that? Like, what are the tools of the trade? We've talked about algorithms and keys. Where do I even begin?
Well, the good news is you probably already are using encryption without even realizing it. Many of the services you use every day, like email, online banking, and social media platforms, have built-in encryption. But if you want to amp up your security even further, you can use things like VPNs, virtual private networks.
VPNs, I've heard of those, but to be honest, I'm not exactly sure how they work.
Well, imagine you're sending a letter in the mail, but instead of just putting it in the mailbox, you send it through a secret tunnel that only you and the recipient know about.
Okay, I like where this is going. So the tunnel represents the VPN.
Exactly. It creates a secure, encrypted connection between your device and the internet, shielding your data from prying eyes. It's especially important when you're using public Wi-Fi, like at a coffee shop or airport.
Oh, because those public Wi-Fi networks can be risky, right? Like anyone could potentially snoop on what you're doing.
Absolutely. Public Wi-Fi is notorious for security vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
But with a VPN, your data is encrypted, making it much harder for hackers to intercept and steal your information.
So a VPN is like having your own private bodyguard for your data when you're out in the wilds of the internet.
You got it. Now let's talk about the different types of encryption keys we use to lock and unlock all this data. We've touched on them briefly, but let's dive a bit deeper. Primarily, we use two main types: symmetric keys and asymmetric keys.
Okay, two types of keys. What's the difference?
Imagine you and a friend want to share secret messages. With a symmetric key, you both use the same key to encrypt and decrypt the messages. It's like having a secret code that only the two of you know.
Simple enough. But how do you share that secret key securely in the first place? Seems like that could be risky, right?
You're absolutely right. That's the biggest challenge with symmetric keys, the key distribution problem. How do you get the key to the other person without someone intercepting it? It's one of the big reasons why asymmetric keys were developed.
Asymmetric keys.
Hmm.
Two keys. This is where my brain starts to hurt a little.
I promise, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Think of it this way. With asymmetric encryption, you have two keys that are mathematically linked, a public key and a private key.
Okay, go on. I'm listening.
You can give your public key to anyone, and they can use it to encrypt a message that only you, with your private key, can decrypt.
So it's like having a special mailbox with two slots. Anyone can drop a message in the public key slot, but only I have the key to open the mailbox and read the messages.
Exactly. It's a brilliant solution to the key distribution problem because you never have to actually share your private key with anyone.
Wow, that's pretty clever. But how do we manage all these keys? It seems like it could get pretty chaotic with everyone having multiple keys floating around.
You're right, it could be a real mess. That's where public key infrastructure, or PKI, comes in.
PKI. That sounds kind of familiar, but I'm drawing a blank.
You can think of PKI like a giant, well-organized system for managing and verifying all those keys. It makes sure the right keys are in the right hands and helps prevent anyone from using fake keys to impersonate someone else.
So, kind of like a DMV for digital certificates.
Exactly. Just like you need a valid driver's license to prove your identity, digital certificates issued by PKI prove that a particular public key belongs to a specific person or organization.
And how does PKI actually verify that? Like, who's in charge of making sure it all works properly?
That's where certificate authorities, or CAs, come in. These are trusted entities like VeriSign or Komodo that verify identities and issue those digital certificates. They're like the passport control of the digital world.
Okay, so PKI and CAs work together to keep things secure. It's like a big, complicated dance, but it keeps our data safe.
It's definitely complex, but it works. But remember, even with a super secure system like PKI, there's still one major vulnerability.
Let me guess. Human error.
Bingo. You can have the strongest encryption in the world, but if you're using a weak password to protect your private key, it's like leaving your front door wide open.
Right, because if someone gets hold of your private key, they can decrypt all your messages. So strong passwords are essential.
Absolutely. And I'm not just talking about password 1213 here.
Yeah, no kidding. What makes a strong password then? Give us the tips.
Think long and complex, at least 12 characters, a mix of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. Oh, and don't use common words or phrases that can be easily guessed.
Got it. Long, complex, and unique. But how am I supposed to remember all that?
One good trick is to use a passphrase instead of a single word. Think of a phrase you can easily remember, like a line from a song or a quote, and then mix in some numbers and symbols.
Ah, that's a good idea. Like, May Force be with you 123.
Exactly. It's much easier to remember than a random string of characters, and it's also much more secure.
Strong passwords. Check. What other practical tips do you have for staying safe in this wild world of encryption?
Be aware of phishing scams. Phishing emails often try to trick you into giving up your passwords or other sensitive information. Don't click on links from suspicious senders.
Good advice. If it looks fishy, it probably is.
And be cautious about what information you share online. The more data you put out there, the more vulnerable you are to identity theft.
So think before you post. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today. What are the key takeaways you want our listeners to walk away with?
Cryptography is everywhere, and it's crucial for keeping our digital lives secure. Even if you don't understand all the technical details, being aware of the basics can help you make smarter choices about your online security.
It's like having a secret weapon in the fight against cybercrime.
Exactly. And the more you know, the better equipped you'll be to protect yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A big thank you to our expert for demystifying the world of cryptography. And to our listeners, stay curious, stay safe, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.